The car didn't slow down when he realized something was wrong. That was the first sign he wasn't getting out alive. 4 men, 1 seat in the back, windows up, doors locked, and nobody saying where they were going. You don't ask questions in moments like that. You watch, you count breaths, you memorize faces, because once the questions stop, the knives come out. He sat still, hands visible, eyes forward. Not fear, calculation. If they wanted him dead on the street, he'd already be gone. This ride meant something worse. The engine hummed like it had a job to finish. Minutes earlier, he'd been standing in a doorway on the Lower East Side, wrapping up business with a man who understood him. Someone who thought ahead. Someone who believed the future didn't belong to old men clinging to old rules. Then the car appeared. Too clean, too confident, too final. The driver used a name he recognized, not a friend, not an enemy either, worse, a collector, someone who only showed up when decisions had already been made. "Get in," the man said. No anger, no rush. That's how executions start when the paperwork's already approved. He hesitated just long enough to confirm the truth. 3 more faces inside. Empty eyes, no curiosity, no conversation planned. From the doorway behind him, his partner shifted, ready to move. He gave a slight shake of the head. "Not now, not like this. You don't fight 4 men who already decided you're dead. You let them think they're in control." The door opened. He slid in. The city pulled away from him block by block. Streetlights, bridges, silence. Nobody spoke. That was louder than shouting. They crossed water. That told him everything. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't a scare. This was cleanup. He studied reflections in the glass. 1 man favored his left shoulder. Another kept touching his coat like he missed a weapon that wasn't there anymore. The biggest one sat forward, relaxed like he'd done this before. That one would be the problem. The car turned where it shouldn't have, away from crowds, away from witnesses, toward roads that didn't ask questions. He felt it then. Not panic, not anger, certainty. Someone with authority had signed his name off. Maybe more than one someone. In this world, when old kings feel threatened, they don't debate. They erase. And he had been talking too much about change, about structure, about sharing power, about money without blood. That kind of thinking gets men buried. The car finally stopped where the city forgot itself. No houses, no noise, just cold air and open space. "Out," someone said. He stepped onto dirt that hadn't seen footprints in hours. The night felt wide, empty. That's when the circle closed. No guns came out. That meant they wanted time. The big one stepped forward, thick neck. Heavy hands, a man built for ending conversations. "You think you're smarter than the room," he said calmly. No shouting, no rage, just judgment. He didn't answer. Silence was power too. The first punch dropped him. After that, time broke apart. Boots, fists, metal biting bone. Questions came, but they didn't care about the answers. This wasn't interrogation. This was theater. A message written in bruises. Who else was involved? Who else believed in the future? He gave them nothing. Pain teaches you things if you let it. It teaches you who wants information and who just wants you gone. When he stopped reacting, they mistook it for the end. That was their mistake. Someone said to get the blade. Steel caught moonlight. Calm hands. No hesitation. This wasn't rage. This was procedure. The first strike burned. The second stole air. After that, he drifted somewhere far away. They worked carefully, like men who'd been paid to be thorough. When it was done, they dragged what they thought was a body and tossed it aside like something already forgotten. One of them looked back uneasy. "Should we?" "No," the big one said. "Nobody comes back from this." The car disappeared. And in the dark, alone, broken beyond recognition, the man they thought they erased took a breath. Just one. Enough to change everything. Because when someone tries to kill you and fails, they don't just miss. They create something worse. And whoever ordered this hadn't realized yet. The war was no longer theoretical. Breathing hurt. That's how he knew he wasn't gone. Every pull of air felt like glass moving inside his chest. Cold mud pressed against his face. Blood had dried where it could. Everything else kept leaking. Hours passed, or minutes. Time didn't matter anymore. He drifted in and out, not dreaming, not awake. Just floating in a place where quitting would have been easier. His body tried to shut down. He refused. No speeches, no promises, just stubborn resistance. Then footsteps, slow, careful, suspicious. A man stood over him, uniform creaking as he leaned closer. The smell reached him before the words ever could. Iron, rot, something that should already be done breathing. The cop almost walked away. Almost. When the chest moved, just barely, it changed the rules of the morning. Sirens cut through Staten Island like a bad idea. Medics stared longer than professionals should. They counted wounds and stopped counting. They checked the throat and shook their heads. One of them muttered, "This doesn't happen." But it was happening. They rushed him in not knowing who he was, only knowing that whatever tried to erase him had failed badly enough to embarrass someone powerful. 6 hours on a table. Knives undone by other knives. Hands stitching together something that didn't want to stay together. Blood that wasn't his filled him back up. Bone got set. Skin got closed. The voice, though, the voice paid the price. Some damage doesn't heal clean. When he finally surfaced, the ceiling stared back at him. White, quiet, safe enough for now. A man waited by the bed. Detective, plain suit, tired eyes. He didn't rush it. He let the silence work. "You want to tell me what happened?" The question wasn't curiosity. It was an invitation to survive differently. Bandages pulled tight around his neck. Speaking felt like punishment. He turned his eyes just enough to acknowledge the room. "I don't remember." The detective paused. He'd heard lies before, but this one wasn't desperate, it was controlled. "You were found cut to pieces, this wasn't random." He swallowed, pain flared, he smiled inside. "I fell." The detective studied him longer this time, trying to decide whether pushing would help or make things worse. They both knew the truth, and they both knew it didn't belong to the law. When the door finally closed, the room felt heavier, not from pain, from clarity. Someone had tried to wipe him off the board, someone important, maybe more than one. Outside, the story grew legs, papers ran with it. A man too damaged to live, somehow still breathing. Doctors shaking heads, cops whispering. The street heard something else, survival. They stopped calling him by his old name. That name belonged to the man in the ditch. This one earned something new. Lucky, not because it was cute, because it scared people. Lucky meant fate had picked a side. Lucky meant plans had failed. Lucky meant debts were now reversed. He lay there quiet, letting the city talk, letting enemies relax, letting allies wonder. Because real power doesn't move fast after an attempt like that. It waits. And somewhere out there, the men who ordered the knives were already celebrating. They just didn't know yet that the bill was coming due. Recovery wasn't rest. It was inventory. Every scar got counted. Every name got replayed. Every silence got examined for meaning. He didn't rage. He didn't complain. He watched who visited and who didn't. Absence told him more than loyalty ever could. Some men sent flowers. Some sent messages through other people. Some vanished completely, hoping distance would erase association. He remembered all of it. The city kept tearing itself apart while he healed. Old bosses barking orders. Young crews bleeding for traditions that paid them in funerals. Everyone screaming about respect while money leaked through their fingers. That noise wasn't his anymore. He'd seen what respect really meant. It meant a ditch. It meant knives. It meant men who smiled while erasing you. So he changed the game quietly. No speeches, no declarations, just conversations in back rooms, in cars, over meals that looked harmless. He spoke about structure, about stability, about money that didn't require constant revenge. Some laughed, some listened. The smart ones stayed quiet and came back for more. The old guard noticed, they always do. One of them crowned himself emperor and thought the war was over, thought cutting out one ambitious piece had fixed the board. It hadn't. The first king fell during lunch. No warning, no drama, just absence at dessert, perfect timing, perfect distance. The city adjusted. The second king made the mistake of celebrating too loudly. Declared himself untouchable. Surrounded himself with ritual and ego. Uniforms walked into his office. Badges that didn't belong. Authority borrowed just long enough to get close. By the time anyone realized, the room was quiet forever. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no confession. When the questions came, Lucky answered the same way he always had. "I don't know nothing." And this time the city believed him, because power had shifted without a single public argument. No throne taken, no title claimed. Instead, a table was built. Equal seats, equal votes, disputes settled with words instead of funerals, business before pride. The old system didn't get overthrown. It got replaced. And it all traced back to one mistake made on a dark road by men who thought thorough meant finished. Lucky never spoke about that night unless pressed. When he did, he never called it luck. Luck is random. This was survival with memory, and the underworld learned something it never forgot. Some men don't come back for revenge. They come back for control. And once they have it, they never give it back. Power didn't announce itself after that, it settled in. Meetings got quieter, arguments ended faster. Nobody said his name too loud, but everybody checked the room before speaking. Decisions started feeling final before they were even made. That's how you know control has arrived. Lucky stayed out of sight on purpose. Let others wear the noise. Let others look important. He understood something most men never do. Visibility is a tax, and he'd already paid enough in blood. Instead, he listened. Who wanted more territory, who was nervous, who talked too much after a drink. He built leverage the same way he rebuilt himself, slowly, precisely. No wasted motion. Men who once ignored him now asked for permission without realizing it. Crews that used to answer to old flags quietly shifted allegiance because it made financial sense. Nobody called it betrayal. They called it efficiency. That was the genius of it. No wars, no banners, just alignment. But peace never lasts long in a business built on appetite. Rumors crept in. Whispers about federal attention, new laws, new tactics. Men in suits who didn't carry guns but ruined lives with paper. Lucky heard it all before it arrived. He adjusted again. He let others step forward. Let others take risks. Let others become visible targets. When arrests came, they never touched the center. When indictments landed, they hit branches, not roots. Some people mistook that for weakness. They always do. A younger crew started asking questions, thought the system was too balanced, too quiet. They wanted shortcuts, faster money, more noise. They forgot why the table existed in the first place. Lucky didn't correct them, didn't threat, didn't warn. He just stopped protecting them. And when the streets turned on that crew, when alliances dried up overnight, when favors went unanswered, they finally understood what they'd lost. By then, it was too late. Lucky watched it all from a distance, calm as ever. Not angry, not satisfied, just aware. Because every system creates challengers. Every empire breeds impatience. And somewhere in the city, someone new was already thinking the same dangerous thought the old bosses once had. That maybe Lucky could be removed too. That maybe no one is untouchable forever. The mistake wasn't believing it. The mistake was thinking. He wouldn't see it coming. The move against him didn't come with guns. It came with paperwork. That's how the world was changing. Fewer knives in alleys, more ink on documents. Men who never set foot in a back room suddenly mattered more than enforcers ever had. Lucky understood the shift before most of his peers did. He'd predicted it years earlier. Power was leaving the streets and moving into offices, but knowing it's coming doesn't mean you can always step out of the way. They built the case slowly. Years of whispers turned into files. Files turned into charges. The story they told wasn't about violence. It was about structure, about organization, about a man who never touched a weapon but somehow directed everything. That kind of accusation is hard to outrun. When they finally came for him, there was no drama, no chase. Just men with badges and warrants, calm and certain, the same way his own people had once been calm and certain on that Staten Island road. History has a sense of humor like that. In court, he didn't flinch, didn't posture, let the noise roll past him. He'd already accepted the truth. This wasn't a fight meant to be won outright. It was a delay, a repositioning. They took years from him, took movement, took sunlight. But they never took relevance. Even locked away, decisions still reached him, messages still flowed, the table still stood. Men argued about what he would think before making moves. That's real control. When the world caught fire overseas, suddenly they needed him again. Needed connections, needed influence. Needed the very structure they'd condemned. Deals got made, quiet ones, doors opened. He walked out older, slower, but intact. The final exile was polite, almost respectful. A one-way trip dressed up as mercy. They sent him back across the ocean thinking distance could undo legacy. It couldn't. Even far from the streets that shaped him, his system survived, adapted, outlived him, because the night he bled in a ditch didn't just create a survivor, it created a blueprint. One built on patience, on silence, on understanding that the loudest man in the room is rarely the one in charge. Lucky never called himself lucky, he called himself prepared. And the men who learned from his rise learned something else too. If you're going to miss when you try to kill a man, make sure he doesn't live long enough to remember your name.